Hello everyone and welcome to another arbitrary ranking of a Star Trek thing. Last time we did Star Trek series finales, and while many would expect Star Trek pilots to be the next logical video, I've decided to wait until Strange New Worlds premieres before I get to that one. Therefore, I've decided today instead to rank Star Trek The Next Generation's two-part episodes from worst to best. Though as a quick disclaimer, Encounter at Farpoint won't be included on this list, neither will All Good Things. While they are broadcast as two-parters sometimes, they were intentionally made as single feature-length episodes as opposed to two-parters with a cliffhanger. If I were to include them though, Encounter at Farpoint would probably be at the bottom, and All Good Things would probably be at the top. With that out of the way, let's jump right into an ad. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. As someone whose livelihood is primarily on YouTube, I know it's always a wise policy to carve out your own space online with a website, store, or portfolio of work. Squarespace is ideal if you want to create a website quickly and easily. No coding needed, simply select a pre-built fully customizable template and then adjust it to your own style and layout using easy to use drag and drop tools, or build one from scratch if that's more your thing. Either way, you'll be able to have your own website up and running in no time. For my own site, obviously I make a lot of videos, which is why Squarespace's portfolios, galleries, and video block features are ideal for the kind of site I want to create. Squarespace also allows you to create each website with a custom protected domain name, which can help your website reach the right audience. For example, by using a specific domain name like .art. All this and more is available for you to check out by clicking the link in the description. Head over to squarespace.com/Rowan J. Coleman and use the promo code Rowan J. Coleman for 10% off your first purchase. Thank you again to Squarespace for helping me keep the lights on over here. And now, back to the video. At the bottom of the list we have Birthright from Season 6. This is another case where none of the episodes on this list are what I would consider bad, but Birthright for me is the weakest. I just feel like a lot of the territory it covers has already been covered by other episodes. The concept of a prison/commune where Romulans and Klingons live together peacefully is certainly fascinating. I also like how it's left up to the audience to decide whether Worf's actions were justified or not. On the one hand, he irrevocably damages this community by riling up the Klingons and antagonizing the Romulans in large part due to his own prejudices, but on the other hand, is it really peace if one of these groups basically has to erase their cultural identity to get along with the other? It's an episode which features some pretty interesting ideas. The only reason it's at the bottom of this list for me is because I feel like there are better Worf-centric episodes, and Birthright has never really been as thrilling, moving, or intellectually stimulating as the others on this list. Above that, we have Unification. This episode being so far down the list might be controversial to some, but I've never really clicked with this one as many others have. While it is of course always awesome to see Leonard Nimoy back as Spock, and the whole thread with Sarek is brilliant, the plot surrounding all of that is pretty standard Romulan espionage stuff. Or perhaps it's because the Romulan invasion plot just doesn't feel like that impactful for some reason. On paper, it's a really big deal for the Romulans to land troops on Vulcan and essentially kick off open war with the Federation, but I've always felt like this is introduced really offhandedly in the episode. We don't get that same sense of escalation or tension like we did in other two-parters like Redemption. As I said, I don't think it's bad by any means, and there are moments of brilliance in this one, but Unification has never really stuck with me all that much. Jumping to seasons 6 and 7, we have Descent. This one is certainly a little goofy, with Lore planning to wage war in the galaxy with his army of disconnected Borg, but this two-parter is filled with great character material for Data. Seeing him confront emotions really for the first time, it gives Brent Spiner a terrific opportunity to flex his acting skills. Data is pushed to some real extremes here, which can be really off-putting for the viewer. It's a real creative risk to see a fan-favourite character like this be taken to such a dark place, which is why it feels like a bit of a cop-out when at the end all is forgiven because the other characters shrug it off as a "you weren't yourself" kind of pep talk. That aside, there's solid action throughout this one, and the thread in Part 2 showing Beverly Crusher in command of the Enterprise is great. I said in my TNG retrospective Dr. Crusher was really underutilized in my opinion, but this is one of those rare instances where an episode took full advantage of the character's potential. All around, good stuff. Above Descent is Time's Arrow, and this may also be a bit controversial. I've actually seen some people place this on their worst TNG episode lists, but I've always had a soft spot for it. As I mentioned in my TNG retrospective, I've always felt like Time's Arrow has some real Doctor Who vibes to it. This was back when time travel wasn't yet overused in Star Trek, and so the whole paradox revolving around finding Data's severed head in a cave is intriguing to start with and satisfying when resolved. I've always felt like Time's Arrow does a great job at walking a tonal tightrope, with some genuinely creepy esoteric aliens essentially feeding off human souls. I know it's synaptic energy in the episode, but visually that's the idea anyway. But this is also mixed in with some great bits of comedy with Picard and his away team pretending to be a troupe of actors and so on. Mark Twain does become quite irritating though, with a voice which is as pleasant to listen to as nails down a chalkboard, and he really exhausts his purpose by part 2. That being said, it's great to see Whoopi Goldberg playing a younger Guinan like a runaway teenager. It's a cool twist to Guinan and Picard's relationship and adds another dash of mystery to her character. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but for me at least, Time's Arrow is quintessential comfort Star Trek. Just like Time's Arrow, I've come to learn some people really aren't fans of Gambit from Season 7, but this is straight up one of my favourite Star Trek episodes. Gambit is just a thoroughly enjoyable sci-fi adventure romp. It's basically Indiana Jones in space, and I love it. Though it starts off pretty dark with the crew thinking Picard has been killed. The way the crew reacts is so well written and performed, especially the scene between Deanna and Riker. Although we never really buy that Picard is dead, it's still a fun surprise when he shows up as part of this pirate crew, and much like Riker, we just have to kind of go along with it until Picard can reveal the truth. I love the battle of wits which takes place on board this ship as Riker and Picard work together to manipulate the crew into usurping Baran. It's always fun to see the main characters break their usual molds. Back aboard the Enterprise though, we also get the excellent thread following Data and Worf. The scene where Data expresses his frustrations with Worf's performance as First Officer is just one of those brilliant pieces of character development. I feel like most of the time Data and Worf didn't really interact, and this episode gives us a glimpse at some untapped potential in terms of a relationship between the two. To sum up, Gambit simply puts a smile on my face whenever I rewatch it. Getting into the top 3 now with Redemption. For me, Redemption does what Unification and Birthright did, but better. As a kid, I used to get bored of the Klingon-centric episodes, mostly because I didn't really understand what was happening in them, but now they're some of my favourites. Redemption and Worf's entire arc throughout TNG really showcases the great storytelling potential of this aspect of Star Trek, which was so well capitalised on in DS9. The Homeric and Shakespeare inspirations are obvious, and Redemption really lives up to those lofty storytelling standards. It truly feels epic, but the scope of the plot never gets in the way of the characters. It's Romulan espionage at its best, with the introduction of Sela, played to excellence by Denise Crosby, and once again we have an awesome Data in Command subplot. To me, Redemption is the next generation at its most Deep Space Nine, which, in my book, is a big compliment. Speaking of Deep Space Nine, a Cardassian episode takes number 2 spot with Chain of Command. I hope this one isn't controversial. I think we can all agree this one is just brilliant. I know there are some common meme-like criticisms with regards to the Captain Jellicoe subplot. It's pretty common among fans nowadays to point out that Jellicoe is not actually the draconian evildoer the episode tries to make him out to be, and in fact it's Commander Riker who kind of behaves like a spoilt child the entire time. That being said, it's pretty easy to watch this episode with that in mind. Flawed characters often generate good drama, and whether you think Jellicoe was unreasonable or Riker was an asshole, it's a compelling piece of drama. You could easily read Riker's actions as him being far too used to Picard and too closed off to the idea Picard might not be coming back. The thread following Picard in captivity, though, is really where the episode shines. David Warner and Patrick Stewart are simply two of the best actors of their generation, and to see them bounce off each other as their characters battle to gain the upper hand is just magnetic to watch. Whenever the show broke Picard's shell and we got to see the usually reserved and stiff upper lip Picard in a really vulnerable position, it was so hard-hitting. Chain of Command is probably the furthest Picard has ever been pushed in TNG, and his final scene with Gul Madred shouting, "There are 4 lights," is so satisfying. While part 1 is admittedly a little slow, part 2 really delivers the goods. But as you've probably all guessed by now, the top spot goes to the Best of Both Worlds. To be perfectly honest, I was really debating whether or not Best of Both Worlds should be here or one of the previous two should. It could be argued Chain of Command and Redemption surpassed the heights of Best of Both Worlds when it came to plotting, character development and themes. However, Best of Both Worlds is iconic for a very good reason. While I do think Part 2 is much weaker than Part 1, no other cliffhanger in the series comes close to the heights of Riker simply saying fire. This was really the episode which cemented the Next Generation's status as the definitive incarnation of Star Trek. Some may say placing Best of Both Worlds at the top spot by default is only due to its iconic status rather than its actual quality, and to some degree I would agree with that, but it's tense, exciting, moving, and dramatic. Even if, divorced from its cultural context, there may be better episodes, the Best of Both Worlds definitely deserves the praise. Thank you for watching. If you like these videos, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on my new uploads. If you want to help the channel grow, join my patrons or my YouTube members, where you can see videos early as well as some other exclusive content. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons and members who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one. And as always, live long and prosper.